In previous videos, we learned about entities and attributes. In this video, we're going to focus on relationships and the role they play in entity relationship diagrams. A relationship is an association that represents an interaction among the instances of one or more entity types. So for example, it's basically that line that connects one entity to another entity. And it has a name that is typically a verb, such as completes in this case. This name is called the relationship type. So an employee completes a course, and a course is completed by an employee. Now don't worry too much about these endpoints that you see here. We'll talk about those more in depth as we get to a subsequent slide, as these relate to cardinality. So when we look at the two tables, employee and course, and all the records that exist in these tables, we can look at the different relationships that each one of these records has with another. So for example, Eric and Jeff take multiple courses, and Sam takes one. Whereas a course such as Java and C++ are taken by multiple individuals, but COBOL and SQL are taken by one individual. Additionally, we look at the relationship degree, which is the number of entities that are participating in the relationship. So for example, in an unary relationship, we have one entity that has a relationship with itself. In a binary relationship, we have one entity have a relationship with another entity. And in a ternary relationship, we have one entity have a relationship with two other entities, and vice versa. There are quaternary relationships and further. However, the primary degree of relationships that you'll see are binary with a few ternary and unary relationships. So let's look at this learning activity of relationship degree. So I want you to identify the degree and the name of each of these relationships. So go ahead and pause the video and try these on your own to identify the degree and name, and then come back and compare your answers. Alright, welcome back. So a patient attends an appointment is a binary relationship because we have two entities, patient and appointment. The name of the relationship is attends. That's the verb that describes the relationship. In the second one, we have author and author. So author co-authors with an author. So this is an unary relationship, and co-authors would be the name of this relationship. In the third, we have a warehouse supplies a part to a vendor. So warehouse, part, and vendor are all entities, and this indicates three entities. So this is a ternary relationship. And the verb that describes this relationship is supplies. So that is the name of this relationship. And finally, the fourth one is a binary relationship where employee is assigned to a project, and is assigned to is the name of the relationship. The next thing we're going to talk about is cardinality. Cardinality indicates the number of instances that one entity can or must have with another instance of another entity. So for example, if we look here, optional one entity that has an optional one relationship with another entity says that they either have a relationship with one record or they don't have a relationship with one record. Optional many says that it has 0 to many relationships with that record, so that means that they don't have a relationship with another instance or they have a relationship with multiple instances. A mandatory one relationship means that each record in this entity would have a relationship with one and only one instance of this entity. And mandatory many says that it will have a relationship with one to many instances of this entity. So let's do a little summary of what each one of these would look like with examples. So in a one-to-one unary relationship, we could have a person is married to one person, but they don't have to be married to a person, and the same goes the other way. We are not going to take into account polygamy. In a one-to-many relationship, we have an employee can manage 0 to many employees, and each employee is managed by one and only one employee. And in a many-to-many relationship is we could have an item contains multiple sub-items, and this sub-item could be contained inside of multiple larger items. When looking at a binary relationship, in a one-to-one relationship, we could say that an employee is assigned to one parking space, but they don't have to be assigned to any parking spaces, and each parking space is assigned to only one employee. With a one-to-many relationship, a product line could produce multiple products, and a product is produced on one product line. And then with a many-to-many relationship, in a binary degree, we could have a student takes many courses, and a course has many students. And then finally, the ternary relationship could look at a patient sees a nurse and a doctor at the same time for an appointment. Now, you'll notice here that I have this box. These are basically attributes that can exist on the relationship, as we mentioned before, and associated entities, which we'll get to in a subsequent slide. There are also recursive and multiple relationships. A recursive relationship basically says exactly what we talked about with unary degree relationships. The new one is multiple relationships, which means that an employee can manage a department, but also a department could have multiple employees. So there's two different relationships going on between these two entities, and they both can be modeled in our database as well. Finally, I want you to take a moment and try this learning activity on your own. Identify the relationships that would exist between coach and player and game and season. Pause this video and try this on your own, and then come back and compare your answers. Alright, welcome back. So now we're going to look at the different relationships that could exist. So we could say that a coach coaches one-to-many players. In order to be a coach, they have to be able to coach one player at least. And a player is coached by one and only one coach, or by one-to-many coaches. You could define this however you want. Let's just stick with simplicity for this reason. Now, if our client didn't want simplicity, of course, if they wanted one-to-many, then we'd have to model it that way. But I'm going to model it this way for simplicity. So a coach coaches one-to-many players. All right, any other relationships that would exist? We could say that a player plays in 0 to many games. They could be a player but never actually play on a game such as the bench players on a basketball team. And a game could have at least one player but multiple players. All right, any other relationships that could exist? A game is part of one and only one season, and a season has one-to-many games. There may be other relationships you've identified in this model, but these are the three that we're going to stick with.